Alrighty, before we get started, we put on the website the consultation form when we started filming training sessions, Zoom sessions, and consultations.
Okay.
Sheba.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've gone so much of my career without like training any, and then I just saw one a couple weeks ago, and then trained one last year.
Oh, nice.
So.
How do you have experience with Shebas? Because I know that they're.
Yeah, different. They're not. It's not. Yeah. So, is Sheba socializing or something?
So can I just let him go? He just wants to. He's my first dog ever, and everything that I read about Sheba said, socialize him early on with other people and other dogs and everything. Mm-hmm. So I did. I mean, we moved up here from Tampa a couple years ago. He's great with people. He loves people, all people. And he used to go to doggy daycare, since he was like 4 months old. Mm-hmm. And then we used to go to the dog park, everything. I took him with me everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know, around when he turned 1, I personally think something happened at daycare. Mm-hmm. Because we went to the dog park like the day after he was in daycare, and just like we would always do. And the welcoming committee of dogs came, and he freaked out. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced that. And I called the daycare, and I was like, did something happen that I don't know about? Because they didn't have cameras or anything either. And they swore up and down, nothing happened. But ever since that day, it's like it changed overnight. He doesn't like dogs that he does not know in his personal space for too long. And he's gotten a little intolerant with puppies because they're like in your face. Once he knows the dog, he's fine. We got a trainer, it wasn't last year, it was like the year before, December of 19. And we've been doing, okay, like I have him on the leash, okay, sniff the dog, here's a treat. Sniff the dog, here's a treat. And we do that for like the first 3 greetings or so, but this past year, everyone and their mother's been getting new dogs, and it's just been exhausting, and he's getting fat from all the treats.
I was gonna say, he's a little chunky there.
So, but and it's not every single dog either, and that's what makes it tough. It's not every puppy, it's not every dog, it's hit or miss.
Okay.
So.
And that's your essentially your primary concern, right?
Yeah. Like if he just, the thing that he does, I actually have a video. Mind you, when the dog is bigger than him, he can't like tackle it to the ground. When the dog is smaller than him, he tackles it to the ground and he sounds like a demon. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't actually hurt another dog. Like he has like little scratches here and there, but. So this was back in December. So we were in Tampa, we went to the dog run. I didn't have any of my treats or the spray bottle or anything. So I was like, oh God, this is the first time he's been to a public dog park in a while.
Good job, Fred.
So now he's coming for his treat, and I don't have one to give him.
Good boy, Bob. You're doing great. Hey, be nice. Good boy.
But he just stands there like a statue, and then freaks out.
Be a good boy. You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's the story of Fred. And that's why we're here.
Okay. So it's possible that something happened at daycare, but I don't think anything happened at your daycare. There's 2 times in a dog's life where there's pivotal psychological shifts, 6 months in a year. Okay, so the dog you have today isn't necessarily the dog you have tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And especially like with, how old is he now?
He'll be 4 in November.
Sure, and things can change at any point in a dog's life, but the most common ones are 6 months in a year. Whenever I hear anybody's like, my puppy's so for everybody, but then something happened, 6 months in a year is usually around the time frame. So it's either they have a traumatic experience or they just shift. and they decide, it's more common with the bully type breeds, pitties, bull terriers, bulldogs, Frenchies, stuff like that. Is that 6 months or a year, they just kind of, they're cool with the dogs they knew before, but then afterwards they're like, no more new dogs. So it could also have been just like that day when he was sworn by the daycare committee or whatever, like that was it, that was the moment. So it could have been that time. But it was the first time you noticed it, so then it becomes suspicious to the average dog owner, but it's not uncommon. I hear stuff like that all the time. Okay. So with Shibas, they're definitely not your usual dog, and they're more primitive. I think one of the most primitive dogs that there, in terms of all the breeds and stuff. So here, when it comes to socializing, I know it's like at one point maybe he was able to meet all these dogs and stuff and have no issues, but now he's different. Yeah. Right. And dogs don't, greeting like that is not the way dogs greet, anyways. It's like my dogs are social, but if a dog runs up to them like that, they don't like it. Right. So what he was doing in that video was setting a boundary. Right. And the reason why he was standing there was saying like, hey, respect my space, and then the dogs kept kind of coming in, so he was getting more defensive. Because if he was actively aggressive, he would have just bit the dog. Right. Right. Whereas dogs are really good about regulating themselves and doing, correctional bites, but not making contact, inhibiting bites or whatever. So in all that video, I saw him doing in his world as appropriate behavior. Right. So you're wanting one thing of him, and he's saying, I'm not that dog. Okay. And that's where we have conflict. Okay. So I can't make dogs social. I can help you socialize him correctly. Okay. But we can't make him something he doesn't want to be. Right. Okay. It's kind of like with humans, right? If the kid wants to be an artist, and the dad's like, be a lawyer. I'm sure you've seen movies and stuff where like they do that and then they're completely unhappy, right. And then they go and do what they were born to do, and then they're happy. Yeah. Or just even as people, like, yeah, they wanted me to do one thing, but I don't care about that. I care about myself. I'm gonna do this because that's what my calling is, right? In his case, he's cool with the dogs he knows, and when in a foreign environment, he's more defensive. In his world, that's technically okay. In our world, because of what people are fed on social media and stuff, they're, your dog's supposed to love everyone and everything, and then if your dog has any aggressive responses, like you did something wrong, right. That's not how it works. So here, when it comes to socializing them, like dog parks for one, are not, like any trainer will tell you, like, yeah, dog parks are a really good idea. Right. Because there's people that bring dogs that shouldn't be there. There was a dog in the River North, this was a few years ago, but it's like on Google if you Google it. It was like a corgi that got attacked by a pit in the River North Dog Park, and I know the dog park because I've trained with clients there. And the people just had just gotten their dog, I guess, and let them go, and the dog attacked their corgi, took their dog and left, and the corgi was left with sutures and drains and stitches, and they're trying to get a hold of the owners, so, to pay for everything. And that's not the only time I've ever heard of that happening, So there's that, because like technically what he's doing, yes, you can disagree with it. Okay, I'm not saying that you can't. But he went in there, he was indifferent, he was aloof as he was known to be, minding his business, and it wasn't until dogs came into his personal space that it became a problem. He wasn't actively looking to start a problem. Right. Right? But if he did that to the wrong dog, and that dog reciprocated, now he's in a bad situation. Right, and that's my biggest fear. And like I said, with the dogs that are smaller than him or the same size as him, when he does that, I mean, he'll literally pin them to the ground and just, and like, I mean, the other day, what was this dog? I don't even know what kind of dog, I don't know, it was smaller than him. But Fred kind of like had its ear, but like didn't have it in like a bite hold type of thing. Like, I mean, it was bleeding a tiny bit, but he didn't like bite a chunk of his ear off. Like he was just like, and of course the dog is like underneath, like screaming its head off, and the owner is freaking out. And I'm like, oh God, Fred, and but I mean, usually I'm there with a spray bottle. Like I got a shock collar to try and just distract him from the sniffing. Like just snap out of it with the sniffing, like the statue thing.
I learned that when he is already in attack mode or whatever, the shock collar does nothing. He doesn't feel it. But the spray bottle, he hates water. So I just spray him and then he stops. But
Do the dogs keep sniffing him?
the ones that he has gone after like that are then scared of him. And then of course, you know, as we keep seeing, because I only take him, my building has a dog run. So it's always the same dogs really. And so then of course, Fred wants to play with them and I'm like, dude, you've scared them. Like they don't want anything to do with you. But,
So like he had a negative response in front of them and then they're deterred by that, but they didn't have a negative response from him personally. Okay. What kind of e-collar did you get?
I got it on Amazon.
Was it like 40 bucks?
Probably. Let's see. What is it? Like, I just wish that when the dogs were sniffing him, that he would just walk away. Or sit down or something. Something like, don't just stand there and take it. Like,
Yeah, it's garbage.
no.
So that's where things get complicated. So in the video, because you know you didn't have your treat or anything, and then you were talking in a very high-pitched voice and stuff, like all that just feeds energy to the situation. So anytime we see tension, we're always quiet, and then we look for our moments to correct. The problem, like it's realistic to expect Fred to be social like the dogs that he's known for a long time, or the dogs he would see within the complex's dog run. But then when we start to go to like other dog parks or like dogs on the street and stuff, that's where things get.
Yeah, and I don't take him to a public dog park for that exact reason. I mean, that time in Tampa was literally a win. Like my friend wanted to go with her dog, and when we first got there were no other dogs there. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then others.
How was he with your friend's dog?
Oh, fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's crazy. Like the dogs in Tampa, we're only in Tampa maybe a couple times a year now, and he still loves them. Like he remembers his Tampa friends, and
Like that he grew up with?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, dog's got a good memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and even like I took another video of him with the dogs in the building the other day that he knows and is fine with, and yeah. I mean, but I don't take him to public dog parks just because I don't trust him.
So is that a dog he knows?
Yeah.
Is that the collar you have? Or is that just a
Out of the collar, yeah.
And he knows all these dogs? Okay. Does he play or does he just stay aloof?
He is hit or miss. It really depends. Sometimes he has zoomies. Other times he literally just stands there or lays down or something.
Sure.
If there's a ball that's involved, then he's happy about it. But
Yeah, kind of like he's just indifferent though.
that's honestly just him.
Yeah, no.
He's,
Okay.
yeah. But I mean, like, there's been so many new dogs in the building, though. I feel like I might as well be at a regular dog park because there's always.
Something new.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what are you hoping to achieve with Fred here?
I just wish that he would know, like, hey, can we not tackle the small dogs and like, and the puppies, and can we try to be a little more tolerant, or can we just walk away? Can we just walk away from the situation that makes you uncomfortable instead of turning into a statue and then freaking out on them like that? You know, like there's no warning bark really, there's no growl, there's no.
There is a warning.
He sounds like a statue.
Yeah. That's the
But,
warning.
I mean, but unfortunately, I feel like other people in the building, they have no idea. Like, I mean, and it, yeah, like you said, it looks bad on me, and I'm like, dude, I'm doing everything that I possibly can. Like, and it's frustrating.
So when it comes, okay, so let's say we teach Fred to avoid and leave the situation when he's being sniffed.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if the dog keeps sniffing him?
I mean, I don't know, just some sort of warning bark or something, or not, like, just don't tackle them and like start a fight, basically. Like, I don't know.
So what makes this complicated is you're putting too much on him. It's like with a kid, right? So a kid, you can tell them, hey, when another kid comes up to you to play with you, don't punch them, don't kick them, don't push them, just ignore them and walk away. And if they continue to follow you to talk to you, go tell an adult.
Mm-hmm.
That you can give that child specific answers on step to step what to do. Can't do that with a dog.
Right.
Okay? So here, now can we teach avoidance? Yes. We can teach him to avoid dogs if he feels uncomfortable. But that's why I asked, well, what do you think is going to happen if they keep pursuing? Because now it's in your court.
Yeah.
So if we teach him to avoid that dog and that dog keeps pursuing him, one of two things is going to happen. He's going to escalate even further because one, he's thinking, hey man, I get corrected when a dog comes into my space.
Right.
So I'm going to avoid you. And then the dog keeps pursuing him and he's like, all right man, I can't avoid you and I don't want to be corrected. So I'm going to just escalate. And then he might even take it even further. Or two, when he avoids the situation and that dog pursues, you now have to step in and correct that dog for him.
Yeah.
And that's what becomes complicated, because then if you try to correct that dog, then the owner's like, wait, what are you doing? And you're like, well, he kept trying to sniff my dog. And they're like, well, he's friendly. It now opens up this host of issues. Because I've been doing this for 10 years. I know how this stuff works. And that's where things get complicated. Okay? And it's just kind of, it is what it is, right? Like, it's a building, there's gonna be new dogs, there's gonna be new people, there's like no way around that.
I know.
Okay? If we try to make, or not even make, force this to happen, because that's how that works, is you just have to make it happen, is it's gonna be ugly. Okay? One, I've worked with a few Shibas, but Shibas, like that vocalization stuff, man, they sound like screaming like spider monkeys.
Yeah.
Is the way this would work is we have to do some conditioning stuff first. We can't just jump into behavior. Okay, so that's usually a couple classes. By the third class, we can jump into socialization with the group of dogs. Okay. Now, if I see Fred start to tense and I correct him with the e-collar, an appropriate e-collar that he will feel and he will respond to, is I correct him if everything's been conditioned properly and he's taking to it. It'll snap him out of it, like you said, and he's going to want to leave the situation. If the dog pursues, we have to step in to correct that dog so that he goes, okay, if I get tense, I get corrected. However, you will take care of the situation for me so that I don't have to. Okay? But now, you're going to have to do that with every dog that makes him uncomfortable. Does that make sense? So that's where things get tricky, because then you're going to be at the park and it's going to be constant managing dogs away from Fred that he's not familiar with.
Right.
Okay? Now it's, hey Jesse, I don't do any of this kind of dog run type stuff. I want to socialize Fred with my friend's dog that he's never met before. That's actually realistic.
Right.
Because we can structure that. There is a structure to it. I teach you how to introduce him to dogs correctly. And you would repeat the exercise, and then over the course of time, Fred may open up to that dog.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
that's what we're doing with the sniff and treat type thing, you know?
Yeah,
So
but
once-
dogs don't relate things that way. Like,
Yeah.
it breaks the tension away. So like right there, when the dog sniffed him, it broke him away from the situation because he's thinking, hey, I get a treat here. But he's not associating that dog sniffing his butt is a good thing because he's being rewarded. Does that make sense? I know the counter conditioning philosophy and stuff, but if it worked, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Okay, so the way dogs work is, in order to deter a behavior, a consequence has to happen as he performs that behavior. So if you don't want the tension, You can correct the tension, absolutely. But in the beginning, one of two things is going to happen. If I correct him while he's tense, like you said, the thought is already there.
Right.
Is we're most likely going to push that action. He's going to become defensive. And then, because people go, oh no, I tapped my dog, it made them aggressive. And I go, yeah, because the dog was already thinking about it. You have to then follow through with more corrections until the dog stops the behavior. So the dog goes, oh, that tap didn't mean to escalate the situation. It meant to disengage and do something else.
Right.
Okay? So then what's going to happen is you correct him, he blows up, but you can't step in to pull him away. You have to make him back off with the collar. Okay? It has to happen with the collar in order for the next time to be successful. Okay? So now you're in a situation where it's like he's with dogs he doesn't know, and you're there, and now you're going to get flack from the people around you, and they're going to think you're making your dog more aggressive when you're not. It's part of the process. We have to correct the dog and make the dog back off in response to the tool in order for him to learn that escalating into aggression is not acceptable. Okay? And then just the other nuance, of course, is following through what the dogs are in pursuit of. Okay? So that's really tricky. I've done it before. Most people give up on it because it's so awkward for them.
Right.
It's not really realistic. It's one thing if it was here in my facility with dogs, because it's my space.
Mm-hmm.
The only people who are going to be here are ourselves and my employees, and then the dogs are under control already. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then if he did something, I'm not worried about is this dog going to reciprocate, because we wouldn't put that kind of dog in there.
Right.
But then also if he did something, we correct him, I know these dogs are going to respond. Because if I'm correcting him and he's shrieking like a Shiba, then it draws the attention of all the dogs, because they're like, hey, what's going on? You know? So that's the complexity of that. When it comes to, like if he was being leash reactive, like lunging and barking at dogs, I would say that's definitely something we need to address, and that's something that can be addressed.
Yeah. No.
But when it's more nuanced, like, hey, like teach my dog to like bark instead of be stiff and like not like attack small dogs. You know, so what would happen is, because again, he has to perform behavior and have a negative go off as he's doing the behavior. Okay? So, have you ever touched hot stove?
Yeah, of course.
Would you do it again?
I mean, try not to.
Right? So it changed your behavior.
Yeah.
So when you're cooking or you're making something, you're in the kitchen and the stove is on, you've altered your behavior to avoid that from happening again, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing for him. Fortunately, we can't proactively tell him, like, hey buddy, don't tackle small dogs. Hey buddy, don't tackle small dogs because it's not polite or whatever. He has to technically tackle the small dog. As he's tackling the small dog, the negative is happening.
Yeah.
And it might escalate the situation because he might think it's the small dog. Now we gotta jack up the power and again make him retreat from the situation so that the next time should it happen and I tap him, he goes, okay, that tap was to tell me not to perform that thought.
Yeah. I mean, is that equivalent to, you know, me with the spray bottle? I mean, not.
Technically, yes.
Yeah. Like,
It's
in
just
a
a
lesser
correction.
form, but I mean, because I mean, I hold up that spray bottle sometimes and he sees it and he's like, okay, no, also.
Right.
Yeah.
So with the spray bottle, the difference would be you'd have to be nearby enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's the struggle.
The other thing is that, and this is technically true even with e-collar, but with e-collar, if all the stuff was corrected correctly, when he has the collar on, like he would know to just avoid stuff. Because he doesn't, like the collar itself is more of an aversive than the spray to the face of water is. Okay, because dogs are physical animals, they bite each other. So he doesn't like it, and you've altered behavior for sure, but it would require you to either be nearby or for him to be actively being sprayed while it's here. Again, constantly just managing him.
Right.
The only upside to the, not only, but the upside to the remote collar would be I could be 30, 40 feet away, and as soon as I see him being tense, I can correct him and snap him out of it. But then I gotta be mindful of the situation, because if he leaves and the dogs keep pursuing him, he's gonna be more heightened. Because he's like, well, I just got corrected, I don't wanna get corrected again, and you guys are pursuing me, like get away, and then he escalates again. Okay? So, when it comes to the socialization aspect of it, it kind of just, it is what it is. unless you're willing to put him and yourself in that kind of situation, you know, with like correcting him if he blows up, and then making him disengage, like.
Yeah, my concern is, I mean, in your experience of doing this with other dogs in his scenario, do they then just never play with the other dog? Like, do they just constantly associate the other dog with correction?
So in the beginning, it can work a number of ways. So when it comes to behavior, there's never any guarantees, because there's too many variables. So the variable is, let's say you take them every day, and half the old dogs left. So you get half old dogs and then half new dogs. And let's say, for the sake of the example, that stays consistent, okay? And every time you take them at 10 o'clock in the morning, it's the same group of dogs with the new dogs, but it's the same dogs. Is over repetition in time, he could potentially open up, okay? Because the new dogs became the consistent dogs. But in the beginning, you would see him be apprehensive because he's got to gauge, why am I being corrected? So it's rinse and repeat. So in the beginning, not uncommon for the dog to think it's the dog that caused the correction to happen. So then you'll see him avoiding them. But eventually he's gonna go like, okay, like, I've been avoiding you, I haven't been corrected. What happens if I let you into my space a little bit more, right? And he allows that to happen. He doesn't get tense. The dog sniffs him and walks away, and he goes, oh, okay, so I didn't get tapped there. All right. Then another dog comes in, tries to sniff him. He tenses up. You remote him. He goes, oh, wait a minute. I got sniffed by that dog, but nothing happened. I got sniffed by this dog, something happened. What's the difference? And he has to start to kind of differentiate why the tap happened until he starts to associate, oh, it's when I snap, when I get tense, when I tackle small dogs, this thing goes off. But if I don't make those decisions, nothing happens. And I'm able to coexist with these dogs. And that's if everything's going well, right? Because then let's say he's doing good, but then one of the new dogs runs and tackles him. And that's now a negative experience. Now you're set back, and now it's like you're trying to remedy that problem now, you know. So in the beginning, yes, he's going to be kind of but I mean he's indifferent anyways for the most part. Like there is no even play drive there, so it's like, so it doesn't really matter, you know. But that's how that would work in the beginning. You'd see him just be like completely not interested, and then eventually over time he could open up, and he may stay the same. And he's like, you know what? If you don't want me to get in trouble, Mom, I'm just not going to interact with dogs. That's the only way I can handle this situation. And we get this stuff all the time, because when we deal with aggressive and or aggression type responses, we always want to see avoidance first. Okay, so if I have a dog that resource guards and like will protect their bone, and I start to walk towards them, I want that dog to go, you know what? I don't like you getting close to me with my bone, but I'm not going to fight you. Instead, I'm going to walk away from this bone. Or take this bone elsewhere. That's avoidance response. And that's better than starting a fight because I was walking too close. Okay? So same thing with this guy. If dogs make him uncomfortable, we have to teach him avoidance. But then he'll be in a constant state of avoidance that it would take either a long time or lots of repetitions, or he just doesn't get around to it in terms of the socialization aspect to it. If he was a player, and you're like, yeah, Jesse, like he played like crazy with the dogs.
I mean, he plays with
his friends.
Yeah, I mean, not as much as he used to, but he does like to play.
I mean, it's like my guys. My guys are 8, 9 years old. My pit, my chihuahua. They were big players when they were younger. Now they're just like whatever. You know, granted they're twice his age, but as they get older, you know.
Well, yeah, no, I know. I mean, but he loves playing fetch, and you know, he loves other Shibas. When there's another Shiba, he will play with them all day long, and wrestle and everything. But yeah, I mean, he does like to play, and he has bouts of zoomies and stuff like that, and you know, he constantly wants to play. I mean, that's why I'm happy the weather's nice, and then I can take him for long walks and stuff. Because I mean, the thing with Shiba, you know, they say they have to be stimulated in some way, shape, or form, and Yeah, I don't know.
Aside from the socialization stuff, like what were you trying to, like, is there anything else you're trying to achieve with him, or is that like your primary goal?
That's really it. He's great in every other aspect. As you can see, he's very,
Just aloof.
yeah, he's very calm, and he's great with people, and he's great with kids. He, you know, he's great on the plane. He's great in public. He's I mean, when we walk on the leash, he doesn't pull, nothing. Like, he sees another dog, he's like, yeah, okay, you know, it's just the sniffing thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to approach this, the way I would approach it is there has to be some kind of foundational discipline to build off of.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as simple as put the collar on the dog and like zap them when they do something you don't like. He has to understand what that collar is, how it turns on, how it turns off. The first thing we always teach is the heel, which is the leash walking. And I know you said like he walks really well, but there's a difference between walking and not really pulling and walking in the heel like we teach it. The reason why the heel is important is because it's what allows us to teach the e-collar to the dog, and also it's what allows you to learn how the e-collar works. To get you familiar with it, because we walk our dogs at least 3 times a day to take them to potty. So it's something that you're practicing on a regular basis. So you develop your skills with the tool. He gets more exposed to it, so he starts to learn what it is as a line of communication. So that when we get to the point of correcting behaviors we don't want, it's not this thing that's out of the blue. Okay, so we always condition it first, which usually takes about a couple of classes, and then by the 3rd class, we'd be jumping into the like socialization aspect of it. But then that would require us needing dogs or whatever to work with him on, and then correcting him. And it would literally be like we go and we might correct him a couple times, and then he just sits at your feet and he's like, I want nothing to do with this anymore. Okay, so then like that becomes difficult because my time is for an hour,
Right.
and we go there and either we correct him and he just doesn't want to do anything, and so we're just standing there for an hour, or you know, he's triggering, he's going to the extent of, you know, tackling the dog, but now remember, we have to force him to remove himself.
Right.
We're not pulling him away from the dog or anything like that. The problem with that is that other dog he's tackling belongs to someone, right? And they're gonna be like, what are you doing?
Right.
And this happened to me once with a client's dog. He was actually here, what's the Tuesday? He was here on Saturday for daycare. Great day. We were at the Fred Anderson Dog Park on the South Loop.
That's where I live.
Is it? Yeah. So we were there, and he used to go to dog parks and everything, and then just became reactive. I think him was about the year and a half mark. Became dog reactive. And he was great at daycare, but whenever he was with the owner, he'd be reactive. So we went to the dog park, and within like 5 seconds, he like just tackled the dog and like put his arm around the dog. Now I had the collar, I had the remote, so I got him to back off within 2 to 3 seconds. But then somebody just like, because as people were trying to run over to stop the situation, right as he backed off, the guy just like looked up and he was like, why would you bring that dog in here?
Yeah.
You know, he was muzzled and everything, but you know, it's just, unfortunately, it looks bad.
Right.
You know. So if you had friends' dogs that you wanted to work with, we could do that. We have some dogs that we could work with here, but then I have to be mindful of how we approach it, because even though you've not seen them actually fully puncture or bite on a dog, I have to take precautions.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just liability for me.
No, I know.
And then a client's like, well, why did you bring that dog, you know,
Yeah.
with my dog? And I go, well,
Yeah, I know.
yeah. So that's the complexity
Yeah.
of it.
Unfortunately, he's already friends with my friend's dogs.
Sure, make more friends.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What I would suggest here is just like, because he's great everywhere else, like right 99% of the places you take him, he's great, except for like areas where there's lots of dogs, right?
Or just, even if it's just him and I at the dog run, and someone with a new dog or a puppy or something comes up, and I stop them at the gate, I'm like, wait, my dog isn't great with new dogs, we have to do sniff and treat, like he's not good with lingering sniffs, or I'm like, hey, is that a puppy? Okay, my dog's not great with puppies because they're so in your face, you know, we have to do sniff and treat. And so I put him on the leash, sniff the puppy, here's a treat, sniff the puppy. Like, it's gotten to the point where when I say good boy Fred, all the dogs come running up to me.
Because they're gonna be a treat.
Yes. Yeah, like
Sure.
they all know me as the treat lady because I'm just like, okay, good boy Fred, and everyone is over, I'm like, here's a treat for you, here's a treat for you, here's a treat. Constantly. And he will literally take the treat, run up to the puppy, stand there for a second, run back, sit down, where's my treat? I'm like, okay, and I'll be like, go sit the puppy, and he'll go. And sometimes he will just like run past the puppy, and I'm like, no, that doesn't count. And I'm like, go try again, and he'll go back again, and then he'll stand right next to the puppy, let the puppy sniff him, and then run back. And where's my treat? Like, I mean, I wish I had that on video because it's, yeah, and then everyone is like, oh my God, he's so well trained. I'm like, no. I'm like.
And why do you take him to dog run? To play or to like pee?
Yeah, to play. I mean, you know, we play with the ball and stuff. When his friends are there, I trust him with the ball. Again, when it's a dog he doesn't know, I usually take the ball away because if it's like two dogs on a ball, you know, that's just asking for trouble. But yeah, to play, I mean, he wants to play. Hell, even after we sometimes go to the dog run, we come upstairs and he's just like whining at me, and I'm like, dude, we were just outside. We just played. Like, I don't know what more you want from me.
You don't correct him for that?
We have conversations.
No. Okay. Does he talk back?
Yes.
Shiba talk or word talk?
Huh?
I said Shiba talk or human talk?
She would talk.
So with the whining and stuff like that, yeah, which is correct, you know,
Yeah.
but unless you set up dates, play dates, like with the dogs that you know he's good with in the building and stuff, you know, that would most likely require going to a separate area, because you're gonna have to anticipate that people would bring, you know, their dogs to the building dog run.
Right.
It's a really complicated situation.
I mean, honestly, it's a kind of a lost cause.
It's not that it's a lost cause, it's that you just want too much from him. Like, you're wanting the old Fred,
Yeah.
right? But unfortunately, like, I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm saying that it's very complicated because he would have to be corrected for performing the behavior. But then who's gonna wanna volunteer their dog for him to tackle and do all that stuff, you know? And then, like, let's say we get a chance to correct him, you know, and he doesn't do anything for a couple of months. It's not to say he won't do it again. It's just you have to be consistent with the corrections. You know, like me, like, I got a ticket the other day because this is a red light camera. And I know it's a red light camera, but I still gambled running that yellow light to see if I would make it, and I got a ticket. And I got a ticket like maybe a few months back for the same reason, you know? So it's, you know, you're wanting the old Fred, but unfortunately, because he's not a human, we cannot proactively tell him, hey, but these things are not allowed.
Well, and the other thing too, I mean, if your dogs are trained to not like invade the space for that long, he's not going to react. Did you just have a picture?
It's not a Shiba, man.
It's just a picture. You're fine.
Yeah, no, he's not a lost cause. He's actually what I would say is a good dog.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that he's not. He has a circle of friends, and he's just closed off that circle now. You know, if you wanted to like get him, I guess the other approach would be. So the structure that we give, right? So like when I get clients' dogs that have like no friends, and then they're like, I have a friend who has a dog. Can we socialize him? And I said, sure. I was like, because it's realistic, because you know that dog, you know that friend, and they would be the same dog and the same friend.
Yeah.
And we keep repeating that. Is you have to do that with all the dogs in the building,
Yeah.
respectively, but then also repeat that exercise with all dogs in the building until he gets to the point where he accepts them.
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it's off the first walk, sometimes it's after like 100
Yeah.
walks.
And that's what we've done too. Like, and I've said to people in the building, like, hey, if we just go even for just a short walk, he just needs to get used to your dog in his space, and that's it. And then we're done, and we're good forever and ever. And they can sniff him, and he is fine. Once he becomes friends with them, he doesn't have a care in the world. He's like I mean, he'll like the big Bernie dude or Bernie's mountain dog in the video. She sniffs him, and he stands there, and he's like, "What you doing?" But I'm not worried at all because I'm like, no, you're friends with Nova, you're fine. Like, once he knows them, he doesn't care.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, and that's where that would come into play, but are you going to do that with every dog that moves into your building?
No, right. Yeah.
That's where things get unrealistic.
I know.
I mean, kudos to you if you want to. I can show you how to do it, but then it's just, rinse and repeat until finally Fred is like, okay, cool. I've seen you 20 times, so I know you're good. Now it's time to do it with the other 25 new dogs that moved into the building, or whatever it is.
And I think my problem too, like, it was manageable for like the first year. Like, there weren't a ton of people moving in or a ton of people getting dogs and stuff like that. Like, it really was the same dogs all the time. Like, we only had maybe a few outbursts. Then this past year, everyone and their mother keeps getting a new puppy and stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, there's so many puppies. And
yeah, no, it's crazy.
And people are bringing their like 8-week-old puppies down to the dog run, and I'm like, okay. And then their puppies are just like all in his face, and he's like, he'll sometimes give a warning, but then the puppy owner is just like, oh, my puppy, and then Fred freaks out on the puppy, and I'm like, well, Fred tried to warn them, I try to warn you. Don't bring a 8 to 10 week old puppy to the dog run to begin with, but yeah.
No, yeah.
I don't know what to do.
I mean, I would just accept Fred for Fred and no more dog run. Because you can't tell people like, hey, I'm gonna claim 6 to 7 p.m. so that Fred can play with his dogs that he knows.
Yeah.
But I think, Fred is a normal dog. He just has boundaries now. I mean, and we don't like the way he handles them, but that's a dog.
Yeah.
Dogs handle things through physicality, which is why we do e-collar, because e-collar is physicality of the principal button. But I'm realistic. I'm not gonna feed you BS to make you think that, because I actually have something going on with another client, and her dog is having issues with dogs charging off leash, and he gets defensive. And I said, yeah, I'm like, my dogs would too. I'm like, because they don't understand that that's a non-threatening dog. And she's like, well, can I correct them for being reactive to that? I'm like, technically you can. I was like, but it's like punishing someone for defending themselves when being attacked. Right, or assuming threat, and not like gambling on the side of caution. But like, I'm gonna just defend myself because I don't know what your intention is.
Right.
It's like punishing someone for that.
Yeah. What are the other Shibas that you dealt with? Like, how do they relate or compare to Fred?
Well, one of them is.
Because he's my first dog ever. So.
Yeah, the one Shiba is bit the owners, bit everybody. No one can come in. Dog reactive on the leash.
Gotcha.
When I started training with him, he was literally flipped upside down, grabbing the leash with all 4 paws, shrieking his ass off, peed and pooped all over the place. Tried to attack me several times.
Oh.
Okay. The other Shiba is just general obedience. He's social.
Yeah.
She just wants recall, and then leash walking stuff. So it's that simple.
Gotcha.
The other Shiba is a little guy. He's like maybe like a third of his size. He lives over daycare, and he's pretty chill.
Yeah.
Ube. So I've had 2, but yeah, I mean, obviously they're in different wavelengths.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the breed so much as it is just the personality type of the dog. people put things on the breed way too much than they need to.
Well, and that's why I was so concerned too about him, because I'm like, his parents were championship show dogs. I was like, okay, I mean, he comes from a very good lineage.
Doesn't mean you can't have rules.
Yeah,
You know, the show dog line thing is appearance.
yeah,
You know, and I know they talk about temperament stuff. You can have 2 top of the line dogs and they'll still breed or can have a dog with genetic issues. Okay? Just like with humans, right? If 2 people, you know, they could be super brilliant or whatever, have the dumbest kid.
yeah.
It's like, it's genetics are a gamble because you don't know what you're gonna get. And again, here, like, you don't have a bad dog.
The vet says that he's the best Shiba that they've ever had.
Yeah. Like, again, 99% of the time you have a good dog.
Yeah.
It's just he's not like he's got his comfort zone. And if it was like, oh, I need him to socialize with my friends' dogs, my family's dogs, like that's realistic.
Yeah.
I can definitely help there. But when it's like too many variables and we're at a park and there's other people's dogs and we don't know those people, like unfortunately it just becomes too complicated.
Right.
So if you wanted like obedience, like I want my dog to come when I call him, I want to be able to take him to the restaurant and him chill and all that stuff, I can definitely help there. That's just obedience.
Yeah. I mean, he already chills at the restaurant.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It sounds like he already like he's
I take
actually-
him to Target and he's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I've been taking him to restaurants since he was a baby.
Oh.
Noises don't freak him out. Nothing. I mean, he could work on the come thing, like, hey, come here. Although, then again, if I'm like, hey, Fred, are you a good boy? Are you a good boy? Oh, good boy, Beb. That's his version of
Nice.
I mean, all he does is sit. That's all we got. Sit. Thank you. He won't lay down. He won't give a paw. Just sit. I don't have anything to give you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, but he's a super passive. I mean, it sounds like he's, you know, just like a low energy type of guy, aside from like in the open space, you know?
Yeah.
So my whole thing would just be accept Fred for Fred.
Okay.
Just because, not saying that we can't, but I've been here before, it gets complicated.
Yeah, it sounds it.
Yeah, and you'd also, what I would suggest is muzzle condition, just so that because it's funny, because people, when I deal with my human aggressive dogs, people will pet your dog with no permission, no problem.
Yeah.
And the moment you tell them to pet your dog, they're like, why? You know,
Yeah.
It's so funny, I'm like people, and I've had people get clients' dogs bite, like, so there was a guy who was standing at the corner, his dog was super human reactive, human aggressive, and we got her at a good place. She stopped all the human reactivity and stuff. She was good with people within the home that she knew, which is realistic. Then somebody, when he was standing at a red light, the corner, came up and just started petting his dog from behind. She turned around and just bit him.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, you know, what the fuck, your dog bit me, this and that,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, dude, had you asked for permission? I would have told you no.
Right.
You just snuck up on me and you pet my dog out of nowhere. And she doesn't like people she doesn't know, you know? And, but yeah, when it comes to socialization stuff, we have to take precautions as well, otherwise people would
Yeah.
feel bad.
No, I know. But so would you recommend for the dog run, should I just muzzle him?
Yeah, you can mesh muzzle them, but I would condition them, otherwise you'll find the muzzle. Which you can use food for. It just takes time. Some dogs, you can put the muzzle on, no problem. Other dogs might fight a little bit, no problem. Some dogs are like, forget about it.
He doesn't really fight it. He, because I have a muzzle and I've done it a couple times, he just, I think he knows like, oh, I'm in trouble when I have this on. So he's even more like aloof. He's kind of just like, okay, I'm just gonna move around and just kind of, you know, do my own thing. And yeah, he doesn't really paw at it or anything like that. He just, Fred, what are you doing? He just kind of
Oh, I think I have treats up there. Yeah, if you want to remove the risk of liability, potential liability,
Yeah.
you know the muscle comes into play. It doesn't help with the behavior itself. It might put him under a bit more stress, just because you're removing his primary source of defense. But
But I mean, if the dog too, if I have the muzzle on him, I mean, okay, in your experience, so if I have the muzzle on him, it's still the same dogs because they all live in the building. And I would imagine that once they sniff him a few times, what are you eating? What did you find? I'd imagine that once they sniff him a few times, they're eventually gonna like stop sniffing him for an extended period, right? Because they're gonna be like, oh, I know you.
yeah, maybe within that time frame while he's there,
Yeah.
the next time he sees him, probably just never forget. Because they're like, oh, what sense do you have on you that you didn't have on you last time? You know, I'm sure you see it when, you know, the people enter with their dogs in the dog park, whatever, like the dogs all come over and sniff
Yeah.
them, even though they know each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like when if someone comes in and I know them, we shake hands,
Yeah.
you know, or we hug,
Right.
right? So it's kind of like the equivalent of that is whenever he enters, whether they've sniffed him before or not, they're gonna still want to sniff him again.
Yeah.
So,
Well, alright, I guess I'm not doing everything wrong then. I guess I didn't fail him, I guess it's just him.
no, it's just don't lick out his buddy.
Frederick.
Yeah, no, you didn't fail him. I get people that do things by the book, everything by the book, dog's still screwed up,
Yeah.
okay? I've had people go out and find breeders and, you know, top of the line dogs, stuff like that, still genetic screw up, you know? It happens.
Yeah.
But in your case here, like, I don't find anything wrong with Fred, you know? It's just that you're wanting to be with him at the dog park and stuff, and he's just not having it anymore.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's just too many variables at that, you know, dog park. So like, I'm sure if you took him to daycare, continue to take him to daycare, they probably keep him with the same dogs that he knows or whatever. Because they're like, okay, we know this is Fred, and we're gonna keep him with the familiar group, but it's easier because they're a daycare, and they control who he interacts with.
Yeah, that was my big thing. So my building has a pooch club in it. And in the beginning of daycare, he did great. And as I told him too, like do like one at a time intros. And he did great, but then there was too many dogs in such a small space, and then he started getting reactive. So then we went to the West Loop location where they actually have trainers there. And I said to the trainer, you need to do one at a time intros. Do not let them sniff him for a long period of time. As long as they don't sniff him, he's fine. So trainer started doing one at a time, and I'm watching this all on video. And then the trainer, I don't know, trainer picks up Fred, then puts him in the room with all the dogs, and they all come running over to him, and I'm just watching this, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And of course, like, the trainer picks up Fred just as he starts to freak out and stuff, and so then Fred failed the first day of daycare, and I was like, well, no shit, he failed.
Yeah.
You set him up for failure. Like, you did the one thing I told you not to do. Like, what the hell did you expect? And, I mean, I was just done. Done.
No.
Like, Fred.
No, that's why here, that's just a bag of treats up there. That's why here we have the 3-day evaluation. So the first day is, the dog's just here.
Yeah.
They just walk around, they get used to the space. The second day is we walk them around and dogs around them, get them used to just dogs, you know? And then we see if there's any energies they don't like or if they have a threshold. And then day 3, we do the one-on-one pairings. And then if we see the dog is super like playful, then we know we can put them in the group and we just start to go 2 dog or 3 dog or 4 dog. But yeah, most places are like, oh, okay, this is fine, throw them in the group. So.
Yeah. There's nothing on your butt, bud. It's just your tail. He always thinks that there's something on his butt.
You know.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd leave you with, if you decided to try to do something, is he'd need 2 classes on heel, okay? And then I'd probably just dedicate, because there's 3, 6, 9, and 12-week programs, I'd probably just tell you to do 6, because 2 are gonna be need for the heel, And then the last 4, we would just use to try to socialize them, showing you how to do it correctly. And then seeing if you can do it in a group type setting. You need to be muzzled, of course. And then it's just, you have to rinse and repeat. Continue that.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, we can fix it in just 6 hours. It's like, here's the information.
Right.
Now you gotta repeat it.
Right.
Obedience is easy because it's just superficial. It's like sit down, go to your bed type of stuff. Behavior stuff is always the most complicated because there's so many variables.
Right.
But that's what I would do. But honestly, my advice to you is just like, you don't need to do it.
Let Fred be Fred.
Yeah, let Fred be Fred. What he's doing is, again, he's setting boundaries to dogs. It just looks bad.
Yeah.
You know?
And the sound doesn't help.
No.
When he sounds like a demon, it really doesn't help.
Oh.
Even his play noises, people are like people that know his issues. There, one guy the other day was like, is this okay? And I was like, oh yeah, this is a good noise. I was like, trust me, once you hear the bad noise, you know the difference between the two.
Yeah, no, I get it, because I have a pet.
Yeah.
So when she was younger and I used to take her to the dog park, because she'd show her teeth and she'd curl her lips and she'd growl and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's just how she plays.
Yeah.
But people, they're like, oh my God, no, it's a pit. Like, they look aggressive. I'm like, she's not being aggressive. That's literally how dogs play.
Right.
So,
Alright.
okay?
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and the insight, and I mean, yeah, it makes me feel better because, like I said, I'm glad I didn't completely fail him. This was like my last hope.
I'm sorry.
I was like, if this doesn't work, then I don't know what else.
Yeah, no, you didn't screw up. No, that's just Fred. That's just Fred, and your expectations of Fred are greater than what Fred is. You know, not that we could. Again, it just gets really complicated. If it was any obedience type stuff, whatever, we can absolutely help you there. But behaviorally, I'm like, if he's for the most part indifferent and like aloof in the first place,
Yeah.
you know, it's like doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So you're not doing it. He's not sitting there in the room going, man, I didn't get to go to the dog park today. I didn't see a friend.
Right.
He doesn't do that.
Yeah.
That's us.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you're fine. I think he's a good dog. You know, he's super chill. He's passive. He's a little chunk. He's the next dog coin.
I know, he looks like the Doge. I get it all the time. I've never seen a Shiba as big as him, and
I was gonna say right now, like he's a little chunker because the other ones I've seen, you know, they're like the leaner build.
he's always been like this. And the vet said, like, his body mass and everything, is good. Like, he's just sturdy.
Big bone.
Yeah. He has the little arch in his stomach a little bit too. Like, he's not a sausage. He's just, I don't know, he's big. Yeah. He's 30 pounds. I think most of it's fur. It's just, he sheds like crazy.
Yeah. I like Shibas. This is actually an Akita,
Oh,
a Japanese Akita.
yeah.
So